It was a calm Sunday evening when I heard my sister-in-law Rachel's voice drifting down the hallway. I couldn't make out the exact words, but the tone was unmistakable, filled with frustration, and perhaps even anger. It was nothing new for Rachel to speak that way, especially since her resentment toward me seemed to grow each day. It all started a few months ago, but I never imagined it would lead to something dangerous. My name is Melissa. I'm 59, married to Robert for over 30 years. We had settled into our life comfortably. Our son Thomas now married to Rachel. I didn't see much of Thomas after his wedding because of his hectic schedule, but this past Christmas, he and Rachel had finally come to visit. I had been so thrilled to make Thomas's favorite soup, and the atmosphere was festive until Thomas made a casual remark about Rachel's cooking. He joked about how she never cooked and relied on takeout, and while it was a harmless jest, Rachel didn't take it well. That night, I caught Rachel sitting alone on the stairs, glaring at me as if I'd personally embarrassed her. I tried to comfort her, apologizing for Thomas's insensitive comment, but it seemed that everything I said made things worse. She accused me of mocking her, pretending to be kind while making her feel worthless. I was taken aback by her words but decided not to escalate things. After that encounter, I thought things between us would remain tense but distant. I never expected what came next. A few weeks later, Rachel appeared at our home unannounced. She had come bearing cookies for Robert, seemingly in an attempt to win his favor. Her voice was different, sugary, almost flirtatious, and it made me feel uneasy. They seemed to bond while I made coffee in the kitchen. I could hear them chatting and laughing, and something about the way they interacted made me feel left out, even suspicious. Later, I overheard them talking about money. Rachel was borrowing money from Robert, supposedly for her mother's surgery. My instincts told me something was wrong. The next few weeks were strange. Rachel started visiting frequently, always when Robert was home. She brought treats, sat close to Robert, and treated me like I was invisible. Every time I tried to help in the kitchen or stay around them, she would dismiss me, ask me to go shopping or do something else. It was clear she didn't want me around, and Robert seemed too trusting to see anything wrong. Then, one evening, Thomas and Rachel arrived unexpectedly, asking to stay over. Rachel claimed she wanted to cook a meal for all of us. Her sudden enthusiasm for cooking was surprising, especially considering her history of avoiding the kitchen. Something felt off. I saw Rachel's expression shift to a sly smile when she thought no one was looking, and it made my heart race with unease. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I got up to use the bathroom and heard a noise from the kitchen. It was Rachel, standing there alone, whispering something I couldn't quite hear. She said, "Looks like it's goodbye to Granny now, huh?" The words made my blood run cold. I didn't want to confront her directly, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister was happening. The next morning, Rachel insisted on cooking steak for breakfast, a strange choice, but we all went along with it. When she brought the plates to the table, I noticed something peculiar. My steak was on a different plate, not one from our house. It looked exactly the same as the others, but I couldn't help but wonder why she had used a separate plate for me. My instincts screamed at me that something was wrong, and so while everyone was out of the room, I discreetly swapped my plate with Robert's. When we all sat down to eat, Rachel's eyes went wide as Robert took a bite of the steak meant for me. She yelled, "Wait, that's Melissa's!" But it was too late. Robert had already swallowed. Within moments, he started choking, his eyes rolling back as he gasped for breath. Panic set in. Thomas called an ambulance and we rushed Robert to the hospital. I could only watch helplessly as the paramedics worked on him, fear gripping my heart. At the hospital, after hours of waiting, the doctor came out to tell us that Robert had been stabilized. They had performed a stomach wash and discovered traces of rodenticide, rat poison, in his system. I was horrified. The doctor asked if Robert had eaten anything unusual, and we explained about the steak Rachel had cooked. The doctor frowned, concerned, and informed us that the substance found was indeed poison. Thomas turned to Rachel, his face pale. "Rachel, what's the meaning of this?" he demanded. Rachel's face turned ashen, and she stammered, "It wasn't me. Melissa must have done something. I don't know anything about it." Her frantic denial only made her look guiltier. "Then why did you react like that when Dad ate the steak?" Thomas pressed, his voice trembling. Rachel's eyes darted around, unable to meet anyone's gaze. She tried to shift the blame, but her story was falling apart. Thomas, his voice cracking, suggested calling the police to investigate. Rachel's face went from pale to ghostly white. "No, please, don't call the police," she begged. I watched as Rachel's facade crumbled, and finally she broke down. "It was me," she confessed, her voice barely a whisper. I just wanted to get back at Melissa. She always made me feel so small, always cooking, always being perfect. I didn't mean for Robert to eat it. It was meant for her." Thomas stared at her, his face a mixture of shock and disgust. "You tried to poison my mother. Over a petty grudge?" he asked, his voice barely audible. Rachel tried to reach for his hand, tears streaming down her face. "I wasn't trying to kill her," she sobbed. "I just wanted her to suffer a little, to feel what I feel." "That's enough," I said, my voice trembling. "You could have killed Robert. You almost did." Rachel looked at me, hatred still burning in her eyes despite her tears. "It's all your fault," she spat. "If you weren't always so perfect, none of this would have happened." Thomas shook his head, stepping away from her. "We're done, Rachel. I can't be with someone who would do this to my family." He turned to me, his eyes filled with sorrow. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have seen it sooner." The police were called and Rachel was taken away. She was charged with attempted murder, and the investigation revealed that she had indeed purchased the poison just days before. She had planned everything, blinded by her jealousy and hatred toward me. It was heartbreaking to watch Thomas go through this. The woman he loved, the woman he thought he knew, was capable of such malice. Robert recovered slowly, though he never looked at steak the same way again. The experience left him shaken, but we were grateful he had survived. Thomas moved back in with us for a while, trying to come to terms with what had happened. It wasn't easy. The betrayal cut deep, and the trust he had once had in people was shattered. Months passed, and life slowly began to return to some semblance of normalcy. We focused on healing, on moving forward. Thomas eventually met someone new, a kind, gentle woman named Emily. She was everything Rachel was not: warm, understanding, and genuinely caring. The first time Thomas brought her over for dinner, I could see the difference in his eyes. He looked happy again, and that was all I could ever wish for. As for Rachel, she was sentenced to several years in prison. I never visited her, and neither did Thomas. The last I heard, she had tried to reconnect with her family, but they wanted nothing to do with her. She had burned too many bridges, and now she was left alone to face the consequences of her actions. I often think back to that Christmas, to the moment when everything began to unravel. I wonder if there was something I could have done differently, something that could have prevented all of this. But then I remember the hatred in Rachel's eyes, the way she had looked at me as if I were the root of all her problems. I realized that no matter what I did, her resentment would have found a way to surface. Life is fragile, and trust is even more so. I learned that the hard way. But I also learned that even in the face of betrayal, there is strength in family, in love, and in forgiveness. Though I could never forgive Rachel for what she did, I chose not to let her actions define my life. I chose to move forward, to be grateful for the people who stood by me, and to cherish every moment I have with them. Today, as I watch Robert and Thomas laughing together in the living room, with Emily by Thomas's side, I feel a sense of peace. We survived. We came out of the darkness stronger, and though the scars remain, they are a reminder of what we overcame together. And that, to